On March 1, Irene Cortez and her beloved husband planned to meet Farad's family in Colombia. They had a good time at the carnival and then went to a bar for dinner and entertainment. Around 1 a.m., they were the only customers left. Suddenly, two guys came in and acted weird. The bar manager noticed and asked them to leave, but they pulled out a gun and a knife. They demanded phones and money from Irene and Farad's group. Things got worse when one of the guys aimed the gun at Irene and demanded her purse. When she tried to get her wallet, the guy shot her in the chest. Who was Irene Cortez? What happened to her? Who was behind all of these? This is your partner in crime stories. Subscribe and let's move along this mysterious journey ahead. Irene Cortez was born in 1980 in Granada, Spain. It's the capital of the province with the same name. She grew up in a rich family with a brother and sister. Irene's parents had a small but profitable business. Her dad passed away early on, but her mom, Maria Lucas, took over. She made the company bigger and ensured Irene and her siblings had everything they needed. Maria had an older brother, Uncle Pedro Lucas, who was a big help to Irene. She was the oldest of the three siblings, a beautiful and social girl. She loved being the center of attention and had boys chasing after her since she was young. Right after finishing school, she got married and soon became pregnant. At 17, she had her first child, and just 2 years later, she had her second. With help from her mom and uncle, Irene got to go to school and learn a lot. Even though she became a mom early in the 2000s, she moved with her husband and kids to Malaga, a cool city by the beach. There, she opened up a fun place for people to hang out. It started as a little disco bar, but it got popular quickly, making good money. Their little disco bar in Malaga grew into a big nightclub. They had another baby, making 3 kids in all. Life seemed good and steady when Irene was 25. But then, her husband got in trouble. He got caught up in illegal things and was sent to prison for 5 years. Sadly, he passed away there in strange circumstances. Now, it was all up to Irene to take care of the kids, just like her mom did with her and her siblings. Irene was strong and kept going. She ran her club well, made good money, and had dreams for the future. She met Cyrus Farad, a guy from Colombia. He was born in 1976, the youngest in a big poor family. Farad's family split up when he was a teenager in the early 1990s. By then, his older siblings were on their own, so he stuck with his mom. In 2001, when he was 25, Farad and his mom moved to Spain for a better life. They settled in Malaga, where Farad hustled to find any job to take care of them both. In 2005, Farad got a job as a waiter at Irene's nightclub. Irene saw how hard he worked and liked his reliability. She was also into him, and Farad tried his best to make her happy. Irene's husband was in jail at that time, and she wanted to divorce him, but he died unexpectedly before she could. Soon, Irene and Farad's boss-employee relationship turned into something romantic. Farad didn't mind that Irene had 3 kids from before, and Irene didn't care that Farad was just a waiter whose salary she paid. They liked each other and decided to live together pretty soon after they got together. They moved into Irene's big apartment, and not long after, Irene got pregnant with Farad's baby. They had 2 more kids together. We're not sure if they got married, but Irene kept her first husband's last name, while the kids they had together got Farad's last name. But then, in 2009, it felt like history repeated itself. Just like her first husband, Farad got caught selling drugs and ended up in jail. Once again, Irene was on her own, this time with 5 kids. Farid got a 3-year sentence, but he only served 1.5 years because he behaved well and helped with the investigation. But soon, after Farid went to jail, Irene found comfort in another man's arms and lived with him for that time. Farid found out about Irene's cheating only after he got out of jail, and he was mad. He even threatened the guy she was with and almost got into trouble again. But in the end, they worked it out peacefully. Farid forgave Irene for the sake of their kids, and they went back to living together like nothing had happened. Irene's family didn't trust Farid much. Her mom and uncle didn't like him, thinking he was just after Irene's money. Plus, Irene's older kids from her first marriage didn't accept Farid. But the youngest one, whom Farid helped raise since they were 2, saw him as a dad. Then they went on a trip to Colombia, and everything changed. In early 2011, Farid said he needed to go back to his home country, Colombia, because his dad was sick with cancer. Irene wanted to visit Colombia too, so she went with him. Farid's sister in Baronial told him how bad their dad's situation was, so they had to go see him. Irene was excited to meet Farid's dad, whom she'd never met before. She was also looking forward to experiencing the famous Baronial Carnival, which happens in late February. Plus, Irene hadn't taken a break in years because of work and taking care of her kids. So she saw this trip as a chance to relax. They planned a 10-day trip with Irene's mom and younger sister, agreeing to take care of her kids while they were away. Despite Irene's mom warning her not to go because she had a bad feeling, Irene didn't listen. Meanwhile, their family business was going through a rough patch, which made things tight financially. But Irene had 3,000 euros saved up at home. Then, just before their trip, she found out the money had disappeared, almost ruining their plans. In a rush, Irene borrowed money from her uncle and friends to cover the missing cash. She booked their flight tickets and a hotel in the city center, getting everything ready for their trip. Sadly, it would be her last. They landed in Colombia on February 27, 2011, and checked into their hotel without any trouble. After arriving in Colombia, Irene called her mom to let her know they were okay. But just 2 days later, Farid had to tell Irene's oldest son, who was 14, that his mom had been killed. At first, Farid said it was an accident. But later, they found out Irene was murdered during a robbery at a nightclub in Barranquilla. The whole city was shocked, and the news spread fast. They said Irene, a Spanish tourist, was killed by robbers who ran away, and the police started a big search for them. The robbery and murder didn't make sense. The attackers didn't even try to steal anything. They just shot Irene and ran off. Even though Farid saw everything happen, the police and media showed up real quickly. It seemed suspicious. When Farid talked to the reporters, he seemed calm, not like someone who just lost his wife. The Spanish embassy in Bogota said Irene was murdered, and they're looking into it. They'll bring her remains back home to Spain once they finish their investigations. The night of March 2 was a mystery to investigators. They were still trying to figure out exactly what happened. Meanwhile, the police were working hard to find the people who did this terrible thing. They looked at surveillance footage from where Irene was killed, and it helped them understand what went down. On March 1, Irene and Farid planned to meet Farid's family in Colombia. They had a good time at the carnival and then went to a bar for dinner and entertainment. Around 1 a.m., they were the only customers left. Suddenly, two guys came in and acted weird. The bar manager noticed and asked them to leave, but they pulled out a gun and a knife. They demanded phones and money from Irene and Fared's group. Things got worse when one of the guys aimed the gun at Irene and demanded her purse. When she tried to get her wallet, the guy shot her in the chest. Then they ran off without taking anything. Fared and his family chased after them, while Irene's sister-in-law tried to help her and called for help. But even though emergency services came quickly, it was too late for Irene. The police went all out to find the robbers and bring them to justice. They even offered a reward for information. They caught one of the guys, Brian Dario, the next day. He told them about his friend, Juan Carlos Juan, who surrendered to the police hoping for a lighter sentence. During the investigation, Fared was accused of planning Irene's murder. Her family hired a detective to look into it. They said Fared knew about some money Irene had saved up, and he was the only one who could have taken it. They also found out Fared lied about his dad being sick to convince Irene to go to Colombia. At Irene's funeral, Fared was missing. He was scared of getting in trouble and didn't come back from Colombia. He said Irene's family threatened him, but they denied it and wanted him to come back and face trial. Later, when Fared returned to Spain, he said he was innocent and just wanted to take care of Irene's kids. But he faced a lot of challenges, like losing his job and not being allowed to leave the country. Despite all the accusations and investigations, no one could prove if Fared had anything to do with Irene's death. The kids stayed with Irene's family, and Fared couldn't get any of Irene's stuff. It was a tough situation for everyone involved, with no easy answers. Dr. Thomas Burchard wasn't just a great doctor, but also a nice guy. He was always there for his patients, especially the ones whose families couldn't afford treatment. He'd even pay for hospital care for sick kids from poor families and help out single moms. His heart was as big as his brain. Despite warnings, Dr. Burchard traveled to Las Vegas to verify Kelsey Turner, a Playboy model claim. Tragically, he was found dead in the trunk of a car, brutally beaten, and left to suffocate in the desert heat. Who was Dr. Thomas? Why was he killed? Who was the culprit? This is your partner in crime stories. Subscribe and let's move along this mysterious journey ahead. Kelsey Turner was born on March 5, 1993, in Norfolk, Virginia. Her mom, Samantha, wanted to be a model and dancer, and her dad, Christopher, worked hard as a laborer. Kelsey had an older brother named Colin. They moved to Jonesboro, Arkansas, when Kelsey was a baby, and that's where she grew up. After a while, Kelsey's parents split up. Her dad went back to Virginia and didn't keep up much with Kelsey and her mom. Kelsey turned into a real beauty, with a killer figure and model-like looks. School wasn't her thing. She was all about hanging out with friends, going to parties, dating, and hitting up different events. Kelsey had big dreams of being famous, like being on magazine covers, doing interviews, and strutting down red carpets. But truth be told, she didn't have much talent. Her youth and good looks were all she had going for her. So in high school, she started going to castings, hoping to make it as a model. Her mom, Samantha, who once wanted to be a model herself, was super supportive of Kelsey's dreams. Kelsey only got a few gigs modeling for clothing catalogs. When she was 18, she married a guy named Jerry Turner. She was already pregnant when they tied the knot, and soon after, she had a daughter named Beverly. But things didn't work out between them, and they ended up getting divorced. By the time she hit the age of 20, Kelsey figured runway modeling wasn't her thing anymore, so she decided to try her luck as a model for men's magazines. Kelsey put together a bunch of sexy photos and sent them out to different men's magazines. Before long, she caught the eye of a few of them, and suddenly, it felt like her big break was finally happening. She thought this was it, her chance to live that glamorous, carefree life she'd always dreamed of. Offers for photo shoots started rolling in regularly. Kelsey was all in for her career, doing interviews, hitting events, and trying to make good connections. But her big moments were just a few one-time gigs for Playboy and Maxim, and she did a photo shoot and interview for 110 magazine. She even traveled to Los Angeles and Las Vegas for these chances. In one interview, she straight up described herself saying, "I'm a blonde with a busty figure and a slim waist. What more do you need for happiness?" Kelsey made it clear that she was all about having a good time partying, hanging out with friends, and just enjoying life to the fullest. She believed life was short and meant to be lived happily and beautifully. Kelsey didn't stress too much about what tomorrow might bring. She had a habit of changing boyfriends often and blowing through any money she earned or got from admirers in no time. When Kelsey was 23, she got pregnant again and had a son named Josh. But the guy she had the kid with didn't want to marry her or even acknowledge his kid. Meanwhile, her modeling gigs were drying up. So Kelsey turned to social media to get attention. She took charge of her accounts and started posting super revealing photos, like in swimsuits, lingerie, or barely covering up her private parts, to keep it fair. Kelsey's social media was all about showing off. She edited her photos so much that she looked like a Barbie doll. She loved posting pics from fancy boutiques, hot nightclubs, and other glam places. Her profile made it seem like she was living the dream, rich, successful, and carefree. But in reality, it was just an illusion. Life wasn't easy for Kelsey, being a single mom to 2 kids. She struggled to make ends meet and never quite figured out how to handle money wisely. She'd spend it all as soon as she got it. Then, around 2016, things got tough after something bad happened to her daughter. Luckily, the girl wasn't hurt physically, but it messed her up emotionally. She became withdrawn and stopped talking. They recommended therapy and sessions with this famous child psychiatrist, Dr. Thomas Burchard, who worked in Monterey, California. Dr. Thomas Burchard was born in Boston, Massachusetts on February 16, 1948. His family was pretty well off, with his dad being a famous architect and engineer. They later moved to Virginia, where his dad taught architecture at Harvard and the Technological Institute. So Dr. Thomas Burchard grew up in Virginia, but he didn't want to be an architect like his dad. Instead, he set his sights on medicine, especially child psychology. After finishing med school and defending his thesis, he was all set to go. Dr. Burchard did some serious work in his field. He trained as a pediatric psychiatrist in different top hospitals and even gave lectures at colleges all over the country. But his big gig was at this public hospital in Monterey, California, where he worked for over 40 years. People were always lining up to see him. He was that good at what he did. Dr. Burchard was like a superstar in his field. Kids loved him, and he could handle even the toughest cases like a champ. He got his doctorate from the University of California, Berkeley. Google Scholar says he wrote over 300 scientific papers that got cited almost 40,000 times. Plus, his H-index, which measures how productive a scientist is, was a solid 81. Dr. Thomas wasn't just a great doctor. He was also a nice guy. He was always there for his patients, especially the ones whose families couldn't afford treatment. He'd even pay for hospital care for sick kids from poor families and help out single moms. His heart was as big as his brain. Dr. Burchard had a lady who lived with him for a long time. Some folks said she was his assistant or housekeeper, while others claimed she was his lover, even his fiancée. Either way, she knew him better than anyone else. She was the first to notice something off about him, like forgetfulness and odd behavior. Turns out, it was early signs of dementia or Alzheimer's. As Dr. Burchard got closer to turning 70, he started getting forgetful and spacey. But he didn't want anyone to know, so he worked hard to cover it up. He kept diaries and notebooks where he wrote down everything, names, dates, and events, so he wouldn't get confused. He was trying his best to keep it together. Dr. Burchard kept all his important stuff in one of those notebooks, like his bank info, account numbers, passwords, and card pins. But here's the thing. He got even more generous as he got older. He started trusting people a lot, and he was giving out way more money than before. Instead of just helping with a couple $100, he was dropping thousands to those in need. Kelsey was shocked at first, but then she figured out she could get more money out of the old man. So, at the next appointment, she put on a real show, crying and telling Dr. Burchard about her son's supposed illness and how she couldn't afford his meds. She had it all planned out in advance. Kelsey Turner's relationship with Dr. Burchard started with a tearful story about her struggles as a single mom. To her surprise, the doctor offered free help and even gave her $300 after the appointment. Seeing this as an opportunity, Kelsey began concocting more and more elaborate stories, extracting larger amounts of money from the trusting elderly man. As time went on, Kelsey's demands grew, and Dr. Burchard's generosity knew no bounds. He paid for her rent and bills, and even rented her a luxurious Mercedes-Benz convertible. Despite rumors of a romantic involvement, Kelsey claimed it was purely paternal care from Dr. Burchard's side. However, Kelsey's lavish lifestyle took its toll. She squandered the money on cosmetic surgeries, designer clothes, and endless luxuries while neglecting her children. Eventually, her ex-husband gained sole custody of their daughter, stripping Kelsey of her parental rights. When Dr. Burchard learned of Kelsey's negligence, he confronted her, threatening to cut off his financial support. In response, Kelsey resorted to blackmail, threatening to spread false rumors about the respected psychiatrist. Fearing damage to his reputation, Dr. Burchard continued to finance Kelsey's lifestyle. In the early 2019, Kelsey decided to move to Las Vegas to revive her modeling career. She demanded funds from Dr. Burchard, who promptly obliged. However, after receiving the money, Kelsey disappeared for 2 months, leaving Dr. Burchard worried. When Kelsey resurfaced, she called Dr. Burchard, claiming severe illness and financial struggles. But when he refused to help, Kelsey resorted to threats and blackmail once again. Concerned for his safety, Judy IR urged Dr. Burchard to report Kelsey to the police. Despite warnings, Dr. Burchard traveled to Las Vegas to verify Kelsey's claims. Tragically, he was found dead in the trunk of a car, brutally beaten, and left to suffocate in the desert heat. Investigations led to Kelsey Turner and her boyfriend JN, who were arrested for the murder. Diana, a witness, revealed the gruesome details of the crime, implicating both Kelsey and JN. In court, Diana's testimony and substantial evidence led to Kelsey and JN's convictions. Kelsey was sentenced to 25 years in prison, while JN received 45 years. Diana, cooperating with authorities, received a lighter sentence for her involvement. The case shocked the nation, and in 2023, ABC's documentary series 20 by 20 aired an episode titled A Model Murder, detailing the tragic events surrounding Dr. Burchard's death. What do you think about this case? Stay tuned. We'll catch you with a new nail-biting crime thriller tomorrow.